The pawn. It is the most numerous piece on the board and in many ways the most underestimated. Each player begins the game with 8 pawns and they form the backbone of the position, defining the structure, controlling key squares, and shaping the nature of the entire game. Pawns can only move forward, 1 square at a time, though on their first move they have the option of advancing 2 squares. They capture diagonally, which means a pawn can be blocked by any piece directly in front of it. Unlike other pieces, pawns cannot move backward, which makes every pawn advance a permanent commitment. This gives pawn moves a unique weight. A poorly placed pawn can become a weakness that haunts the entire game. What makes the pawn truly special is its potential. Any pawn that reaches the opposite end of the board promotes to any piece the player chooses, almost always a queen. This threat of promotion gives even a single passed pawn enormous power in the endgame, and many games are decided entirely by whether one side can escort a pawn to the 8th rank before the opponent can stop it, the knight. It is the only piece on the board that can jump over other pieces, and its movement is unlike anything else in chess. The knight moves in an L shape, 2 squares in one direction and 1 square perpendicular, or vice versa. This gives it access to squares that no other piece can reach in a single move, and makes it particularly dangerous in closed positions where other pieces are blocked by pawns. A well-placed knight in the center of the board can exert influence over up to 8 squares simultaneously. Knights are at their weakest on the edge of the board where their options are dramatically reduced, hence the old saying that a knight on the rim is dim. Because the knight alternates between light and dark squares with every move, it can reach any square on the board given enough time, making it a surprisingly versatile piece despite its short range. The bishop. It moves diagonally any number of squares and never leaves the color it starts on. This means each player has 1 bishop that stays on light squares and 1 that stays on dark squares for the entire game. The bishop is a long-range piece that thrives in open positions where its diagonals are unobstructed. In closed positions with fixed pawn chains, bishops can become completely passive, particularly when their own pawns sit on the same color squares and block their movement entirely. This is known as a bad bishop, and avoiding the structure that creates it is a key strategic concern from the very first moves of the game. 2 bishops working together, controlling both sets of diagonals, are considered one of the most powerful combinations of minor pieces in chess, and are often worth slightly more than a bishop and knight or 2 knights in open positions. The rook. It moves horizontally or vertically any number of squares and is one of the most powerful pieces on the board. Rooks are most effective on open files, columns with no pawns blocking their path, where they can control the entire length of the board from a single square. 2 rooks working together are extraordinarily strong, able to cut off the opposing king, support passed pawns, and deliver checkmate with minimal assistance. The rook is somewhat slow to activate in the opening because it needs pawns to move and pieces to develop before it can find open lines. Placing a rook on the 7th rank, the road just before the opponent's back rank, is one of the most powerful positional achievements in chess, as it simultaneously attacks pawns and restricts the opposing king. This is why rook endgames are so common. By the time the board clears, the rooks finally come fully into their own. The queen. She is the most powerful piece on the board, combining the movement of the rook and the bishop into a single piece. The queen can move any number of squares horizontally, vertically, or diagonally, giving her unmatched range and flexibility. Losing the queen is almost always catastrophic. The material imbalance is so severe that recovery is extremely difficult without significant compensation. Despite her power, the queen is often kept off the board in the opening to avoid being chased by less valuable pieces. Bringing her out too early is one of the most common mistakes beginners make, as the opponent can gain tempo by attacking the queen while developing their own pieces for free. In the middle game, the queen works best in coordination with other pieces rather than operating alone, and in the endgame she is usually sufficient to deliver checkmate with only the help of the king. The king. It is the most important piece on the board and paradoxically one of the weakest in terms of movement. The king can move 1 square in any direction, horizontally, vertically, or diagonally, but must never move to a square where it would be under attack. The entire game revolves around the safety of the king, and exposing it prematurely is one of the most common ways games are lost at every level. Castling is the king's most important defensive resource, a special move that simultaneously tucks the king away behind a wall of pawns and activates a rook in a single turn. It is the only move in chess where 2 pieces move at the same time. In the endgame, however, the king transforms into an active and powerful piece, often marching into the center to support pawns and participate directly in the final battle. The contrast between the king's fragility in the opening and its strength in the endgame is one of the most fascinating aspects of chess.